On to the latest COVID-19 situation here. 359 new cases were confirmed today, taking our total to over 51,100. Only one community case was confirmed, a work pass holder.
Today's count also includes 2 imported cases who had been placed on stay-home notices upon arriving in Singapore. Migrant workers living in dormitories made up the remaining cases, and more details will be shared later tonight.
Wearing masks and social distancing have become part of daily life in the COVID-19 pandemic. But 6 months on, has fatigue hit home? Professor David Chan, Director of the Behavioural Sciences Institute at Singapore Management University, joins us now to further discuss this concept of COVID fatigue. Prof Chan is also an author of a new book, Combating a Crisis, about the psychology of Singapore's response to COVID-19. Prof, some people are beginning to use the term COVID fatigue. Is it a scientific concept in psychology, or what is COVID fatigue really?
That is referring to the general population, public at large like you and me. And because of the circuit breaker, or in some countries they call it lockdown, and even when you get out of the circuit breaker or lockdowns, there are still several restrictive movements. And the idea here is really about constraint fatigue. Right? We are being constrained and we feel fatigued. And what are the constraints? There are constraints on your freedom of movement. There are constraints on your freedom of choices, because there are certain things that you can choose to do, but there are certain things that you can't do. For example, I have to wear my mask. I cannot say, let's not wear the mask. And I have to social distance. And when I go to a restaurant, I can sit here but not there because there's a cross and so on. And when I go out with friends, I'm limited to the group of 5 in the case of Singapore's phase 2 right now. So these are constraints. So when we say COVID fatigue, I think you are referring to what general public may feel in terms of the constraints on our behaviors, on our choices, and their implications. And we can use scientific psychology and other research to look at the implications of this fatigue.
Right. So from what you've observed in phase 2, how would you describe our situation with regards to public attitudes and behaviors?
Well, right now we are already several weeks into phase 2. I think when we get out of the circuit breaker right into phase 1 and we are beginning into phase 2, I would characterize the members of public attitude or behaviors as ones of vigilance, because you begin to transit from one phase to another. You begin to figure out, what am I supposed to do, especially if you're an SME holding a business. But even if you're an organization, can I go to work? What must I do? And so on. Now, the problem, maybe not the problem, but the issue is that now that we are several weeks into phase 2, we kind of habituate. You kind of get normalized. You roughly know what you can do and cannot do, and you just live the life that you want to live. Now, if you watch TV or you read newspaper every day, you still know that actually the global situation is pretty bad, right? In fact, within a short time, we go up into 16 million and so on. And that means that even if we were to seal off the border, which we can't seal off indefinitely, it is quite possible for us to have new waves of infection. So the issue about attitudes and experiences and behavior is whether we are entering into a habituate situation where you feel actually a bit of complacency, and that's quite dangerous.
Prof, on that note of habituating and like you said, normalizing, we still see some individuals not adhering to safe distancing practices then. Perhaps some are also getting restless or tired from having to work from home for a few months now. Could it be that we are fatigued from following rules, as there is no end in sight for phase 2, or even the fact that, just the fight against COVID-19 in general?
I think we need to differentiate 2 things. One is the fatigue, the general difficult psychological condition that you feel because you are stuck at home, you cannot go to office, you are working from home, and you have certain restraints about wearing masks, and so on. So you feel certain negative emotions, and these translate into negative attitudes and experiences. And the question then is how to deal with this difficulty. But I think you are alluding to something else, and that is the fact that there are people who are not following rules. And I would say, broadly speaking, at the risk of simplifying, there are 2 types. One is that sometimes you get a little bit agitated, you take out your mask longer than you should when you're not eating. Sometimes when you go out with friends, you forgot, a friend come by and you end up with a table of 6 and so on for a short while. Now, those are not following rules in the strictest sense of the word, but in a sense, those are ad hoc kind of violations, which sometimes we got to be a bit I wouldn't say lenient, but got to be a bit understanding. But there are the second type which we should be much more concerned, and those you see where you have large groups of people gathered at the East Coast Park. Well, you may be going out in a family or friends of 5 or less, but then very near you, there's another group of 5 or less. and then there's another group of 5 and so on. So you ended up actually mixing with a large group of people, and most people, if you notice, some of them are not wearing masks. And when you are in the hot sun, you sweat, you perspire, you talk. And those are the issues that we should be much more concerned. It is not just complacency. There's a false sense of security to act as if that it will never happen to me. And that is something that we, the government, the authorities, and all of us got to be a bit more careful.
Thank you for your insights, Prof. Chan. We were speaking to Professor David Chan, who is the Director of the Behavioural Sciences Institute at SMU.